Hi, this is Antonio Galimberti from AG Languages. So thank you for being here. Before we start with today's presentation, we have Chelsea Miles today. Let us share some information about the services that we provide. And Chelsea, next, please.
Yes, give me 1 second. Having some
No.
technical. There we go.
Aha.
There we go.
So these are the services that we provide at AG Languages: General English, English for Business, English Boosters, preparation for international exams, speaking workshops, pronunciation workshops, writing workshops, English for Kids, international certification also with PEIC, also placement, thanks to Pearson and level test, online preparation or interpretation, I should be saying, and Spanish. Now we have organized our services in this way. We are offering one-on-one sessions. Also, we are doing groups and kits. If you need some information, please contact us, visit our website, aglanguages.com. That's our email address, info@aglanguages.com, and that's our WhatsApp number. You can also find us on Facebook under aglanguages.com and on Instagram under AG Languages. So today we have Chelsea Miles. We are so happy to have her here. So let me share some information about Chelsea with all of you guys. So Chelsea Miles is the designated speaker for presentation. She has been teaching English as a second language for about 3 years, and she holds a TEFL certification. She has enjoyed teaching students from various countries, including China, the Caribbean, as well as Central and South America. She has been participating in an international volunteer program for over 15 years, which has allowed her to travel and get to know people from various cultural backgrounds. She also learned Spanish as a second language through study and immersion. How important is that, right?
Mhm.
And that experience has helped her to better understand her students when it comes to learning a new language and culture. She currently lives in the Caribbean island of the Dominican Republic. Wow, Chelsea. And she loves plants and flowers. She has 2 cats, Rubio and Neko. She loves espresso coffee, both hot and iced, as well as trying foods from all over the world. Her belief is that each student is an individual and that a key part of education is getting to know each student and adapting their learning experience to them. So thank you, Chelsea. We are ready. And this is what you will be talking about today: how to provide feedback in the e-classroom. Chelsea, please.
Okay, thank you, Antonio, and thank you all for coming. So like Antonio mentioned, we're going to be talking about how to provide feedback in the e-classroom. And along with that topic, I'm hoping I can get some feedback or participation from the audience today. So that would be awesome if you guys can help out with that. So feedback, what does it mean? So before we get into that, I'll open that up to the audience. Feedback, what's it mean for you, your experience in general, or even in the educational context? What's feedback? Any takers? Antonio?
Well, I think it has to do with correction and with helping students.
Exactly. Thank you. And so a definition that I found that I really appreciate it says feedback is the transmission of evaluative or corrective, as Antonio mentioned, information about an action, event, or process to the original or controlling source. So just to simplify that, the original controlling source would be the student, and we're the ones offering the evaluation or the corrective information about what they did, in this case, their English. So as we're going to see throughout this process, this presentation, different ways that we can offer feedback, and how we can also differentiate a little bit from correction. Okay, so again, feedback is just literally that, our feedback to what the student puts out. They put something out, we give them feedback on what they did. And as we'll learn, that can be positive or negative. It doesn't always have to be corrective. So what we'll talk about today, why is feedback important? What are the problems and what are the solutions? And it's a really great topic. And as we've seen with AG languages, feedback is something that highlights AG languages, kind of differentiates it from some other companies. So feedback is such a great feature to use in teaching, and something that we can really develop to help our students really take their education to the next level. But like with anything, we have to know why it's important for us to be able to do it, and also what the challenges are and how to overcome those challenges. So first of all, why is feedback important? Again, I'm going to ask you for your feedback. Why do you think it's important? Any takers? Antonio.
Yeah, it can be me again. So thank you, Chelsea. Well, I think that it is important in a class, because if there's no feedback, then there's no class. It's just a conversation between two people, and in this case, a teacher and a student. And if students are looking for a teacher's assistance, so they need more than just a conversation. They need meaningful feedback. So once a student gets that feedback, so he can value the service that he's receiving.
Exactly. Thank you. And that's something we had talked about earlier on, that's what differentiates, I'm sorry, a classroom environment, why people pay for our services, versus a conversation they may have with someone on the street that speaks English. It's a conversation, it's beneficial, but our professional feedback, intentional feedback, is what really helps them to learn and bring their English up, and for them to learn and flourish. So feedback is super important. So again, why are feedback or follow-up moves, why are they important? And later on, we'll talk about why we call them follow-up moves. So first, it mentions here, it provokes a student to think and evaluate their English. Okay, so it's not just us talking at them, like Antonio mentioned, valuable, specific feedback. It helps them to think, and then they will learn to be able to correct themselves. Point two, by thinking and learning to correct themselves after being prompted, they are more likely to remember and apply what they've learned. Students are, depending on where they are, they may be surrounded by the English language, but by being able to think on their own, prompted by our well thought out feedback, that'll help them to remember the points that we've pointed out and to be able to apply them, not just have random information surrounding them. So that's very important. And then as it brings out, third point, the student will benefit from the teacher's knowledge and observation. There's a reason why we became teachers, right? We learned how to teach, not just speak the language, we learned how to teach it. So our knowledge, as far as whether it's grammar, communication, our ability to observe and pick out errors or improve communication, they won't benefit from that if we don't express that to them in our feedback. So we have all of this knowledge or this experience that we're offering to them, but if we don't express it, they're not going to benefit from that. And part of how we express that to them is in our feedback. Okay, so what are the challenges? We're going to focus on two here in the presentation. There's more, but these are two that I find that we may come across a little more often. First of all, emotional or personal reaction of the student. What does that mean? Although it's teaching, it's information, we're transmitting information, but there's more to that. Humans are more complex than just yes, no, right, wrong, right? You tell someone they're wrong, they can hurt their feelings. They might take it personally. Oh, she just insulted me. She insulted my intelligence. She insulted my work. There's much more involved than just pointing out a simple error. Our students are not computers, but they're people. So we have to be able to give the feedback in a way that doesn't tear them down, doesn't discourage them, doesn't insult them, but rather dignifies them, helps them, and allows them continue learning and to put that feedback into action to progress. Now, that's the first challenge. Second challenge is students clearly being able to understand the feedback. So we can be offering the best feedback in the world, But if they don't understand what that feedback is, it's useless. It was pointless. They don't benefit from it. And we just heard ourselves say something that we already knew. There's a common thought or a proverbial thought that says if a war cry is unclear, right, nobody will benefit from it. So in ancient times, there were different horn blows for different actions that had to be taken by an army: to go up, to go down, to stay, to go. If they didn't understand, if it was indistinct, they didn't understand it, they couldn't act. So it was useless. Same here. If we're giving feedback and it's not clear to the student, they don't know what we're correcting, what we're commending on, what they're supposed to do, it's useless to them. So we have to make sure that our feedback is clearly understandable to them, not just to ourselves. So those are the two challenges we're going to talk about. Solutions to those challenges. Number one, know your students. Personality, culture, confidence level, learning style. How does this help? This will help us mainly on the emotional aspect, being able to be sure that the feedback is well received by the student. As I'm sure we've all learned, different cultures receive things differently. Maybe what's appropriate in one culture, maybe in other cultures more insulting. We're not going to be the expert of it, but having an idea of where our students come from, how they perceive things, will help us to be able to give feedback in a way that they can best receive, that's not insulting to them. Their personality. There are some people, as I'm sure we've seen some students, you can tell them just about anything, it rolls off their back, they move forward, they're good. Other students, the slightest change in your voice or your face, and they shut down. They feel defeated, they feel discouraged. So we have to know our student, know how they learn, know where their confidence is. And by knowing these 4 factors, that'll help us to tailor our feedback to them. So that when we give them their feedback, they feel good, they can take it, they can apply it, and they feel like they've learned something. They don't walk away feeling like, wow, I speak the worst English in the world and my teacher thinks I'm horrible. That's not what we want. We want to build them up and for them to take what we've given them and to move forward. So knowing our students is going to really help us to know how to deliver that feedback to them. Keep it human. And as simple as that sounds, it can be challenging because when we go in teacher mode, it's like, oh, that was wrong, that was right, it should have been past, but it's present, this, that, and we're ready to just correct. And with the greatest of intentions. But like it brings out here, if you're overly focused on just correcting, you may focus solely on the errors and correcting them, lacking human responsiveness to what the student is saying. And that can crush a student. They're coming, they're expressing themselves, they learn new words, they learn how to say something, and they're excited, and you're like, nope, 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 nope. And although those are things that can help them learn, it can crush all the effort they just made. So keep it human. And we're gonna see some techniques at how to do that. But just remember, we're talking to a person, not a computer. Smile, listen to what they're saying, involve yourself in the conversation, react, help them to know that you're there, you're listening, you appreciate what they're saying. We're not a machine to just spit out correction. So that's something that'll help too, is keeping it human. Solution number 3, use feedback or follow-up moves rather than just correction. So why do we call it follow-up moves? Because follow-up moves is simply that. We're following up what the student is saying. And it doesn't even have to be that they're wrong. We're just following up. And that comes with the art of conversation. Someone speaks, you respond. And that's what we want to do with our students. We want to learn to give them feedback, but we want to follow up what they say. So focusing here on the difference between correction, it says, whereas correction only focuses on the errors made and correcting them possibly in a cold way, like we just spoke about, feedback or follow-up moves focus on continuing the conversation, offering both positive and corrective responses. So correction is typically involved in feedback, but it doesn't only have to be that. If they say something right, we can still follow that up with something else, and we're going to learn a question or a statement. But that's a mentality that we can learn to develop, is feedback or follow-up moves. Follow up what the student is saying, keep the conversation flowing, keep it positive, and then we can incorporate the correction into that. Solution number 4, a way to do that is reformation. And what reformation is, we'll talk about a little bit here. The student says something and we respond by basically saying the same thing in another way. We reform what they say. How is that positive? Well, it shows the student that we're listening. We're hearing what they're saying. We're not just listening for their errors, but we're actively listening to them. It's an indirect way of correcting. We can still correct them, but they may not feel that boom of correction, you're wrong. And it can provoke the student to self-correct. How so? Well, we have this example here. Our student says, I has 2 cats. We see the error there. So how can a teacher respond with a reformation? Oh, really? You have 2 cats. So we see here there was a correction, but the student wasn't explicitly corrected. No, that's wrong. It's not has, it's have. Rather, they were corrected, but now the conversation is flowing. They can hear that and say, oh, she said have, I said has. That's wrong. And it can keep the conversation going. But she heard what I said because she repeated it. So she listened and knows that I have 2 cats. So that's a method that we can use when offering feedback, is reformation. But what are some of the challenges of that method? First of all, it could be a lack of clarity. It's too indirect. So they may not know that you corrected them, right? Number 2, they may just think you repeated what they just said, or you're just being conversational. So in the example that we used, the student says, I has 2 cats. And you say, oh, you have 2 cats. They're like, yeah. And just move along. They have no idea that they said something wrong. They think you're just correcting them, or you're just conversing with them. I'm sorry. So what can be a solution to that? Intonation. So again, with our same example with the cats, I has 2 cats. Oh, really? You have 2 cats? So here we're saying the same thing, but by changing our intonation, emphasizing have, we're a little more directly correcting them, but still not explicitly. And now they can hear what we're focusing, right? Oh, have, I said has. There's a way of giving feedback, correction, again, without being overly explicit, without insulting the student, and it gives way to more conversation. Solution number 5, another method we can use, elaboration. Asking where, when, and why to get students to elaborate. Many of us have used this in other settings where we want to have a conversation and we just ask questions to get to know the person, to find a common ground, to keep it flowing. So what does that accomplish? It shows the student that we care, right? And it pushes them to go further in that they don't just say one thing and we're like, oh, okay, that's nice, and move along. But now they have to work their mind to continue speaking. So again, here we have our same example. I has 2 cats. Oh, really? Well, what are their names? So now the student, oh, well, now I have to formulate another sentence. Well, their names are such and such. Oh, well, how old are they? What colors are they? How big are they? And all of these elaborating questions will allow the student now to elaborate on what they said. Again, there'll probably be plenty more mistakes in that elaboration, but it'll allow their mind to get working and for us to also be able to help them with feedback and correcting the mistakes. So that's another way that we can give feedback, again, keeping it human and keeping the conversation going and get the student's mind to work, because that's something we always want to keep in mind. We're not just talking at them, throwing answers, throwing corrections, but we want them to get their mind to work, their creative process, so that they can learn how to identify their mistakes and self-correct. Number 6, pursuit. It's basically what the word says. We want to pursue what the student said. We push, provoke, chase what they said. The responses become a creative agent. Sorry. So, let me come back. I'm going the wrong way. There we go. Sorry. Okay.
No worries, no worries.
Sorry. Okay, so pursuit. Pursuit is very similar to elaboration. So if we think you chasing something, you're literally chasing what the student said. The student says, I like coffee. Oh, really? Why do you like coffee? How do you like your coffee? What do you like about coffee? When did you first have coffee? And we're just pushing, we're pursuing, we're chasing what they said. And again, that's going to force them to now become creative, to use the knowledge that they have, put it into action, and it's going to help us now to be able to draw them out. And as we're doing that, again, we can implement the other forms of feedback and directly or indirectly correct them as they're speaking. But again, this is an agent that helps us, again, to keep it human, let them know that we care, but also to push the student, provoke them in a positive way to use their minds, use what they know, because if they don't use it, it's not going to be of much use to them. So pursuit is another technique you can use. Problematize. Okay, this one was kind of fun. It was interesting, and it's especially nice in a group setting. But this is where we can turn anything into a problem, even if it's correct. So again, this also provokes creative thinking, and it's great in a group setting. So how can this be done? If we think, for example, we're in a group setting, or even if it's one-on-one, the student says, I love to go drink coffee. This teacher say, was the way she said that, was that correct? It was, but now everyone's thinking, well, if it wasn't, what would be wrong with it? And now again, we're provoking the creative process. And now we're allowing the actual students to analyze their own work or their peers' work and offer feedback. They're offering feedback now, but that helps their minds to get working. An example, was it said correctly? Like we mentioned, an activity allows students to correct each other's work. Again, that would have to be well thought out. Sometimes it's nice to do it anonymously so that the students don't feel bad. But by getting all the students involved, now giving them the authority, so to speak, to be a teacher or to present the problem, it will allow them now to put into work what they've learned, the principles and what they've learned. So that's a great way, again, to get the mind working, is to problematize. And then again, even if it's correct. So that's fun because the students, it doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong. So they're going to know too that, wow, I can analyze this, I can look at it, but it doesn't mean that it was bad. But it just lets them to look at it from a more objective perspective and break it down and say, no, that was fine. Or actually, no, I think I would change this. But it's a great way to get their minds working. And then for you to see too, where they're at, what they understand. It's a great way for you to be able to see a little bit into their process. An activity that I liked that one of the professors mentioned about allowing students to correct each other's work, what he did was he wrote on the sheet of paper at the beginning of a story, everyone wrote the same thing. So for example, I'm gonna go on vacation this summer. Everybody had to write it down on the sheet of paper. Then what they did was they did two circles, an inner circle, I believe they call it, where one group of students is on the inner circle, the other group is on the outer circle, and they move one to the left, one to the right, and they pass their paper along. And so everyone has the same heading, but now each student that they pass it along to has to add a sentence, then another student, until now we have a little story. And then now that the stories are composed of the work of all the students, they all correct it. So it's a great way to get all the students involved. It's more neutral because one is not just correcting another one, but everyone's correcting everyone. So that's a really nice way to get the students to analyze, or as we problematize, analyze each other's work, their own work, and correct it. And then they have fun doing that. It's more fun for them to correct than us just correcting them the whole class. Solution number 8, stay away from conversation stoppers. And an example that I love that one of the professors brought out was very good. And he emphasized the following intonation at the end, very good. Why? That ends the conversation, leaves no room for development, and it may frustrate the student if they are being commended and don't know why. That's something that we want to take into consideration. Just because we say something is good doesn't mean that they're going to feel good about it. If they don't know why we said they did good, they don't know what they did good, they have no idea what we're talking about. Rather than feel good, they're just like, well, okay, I guess I did good, but I don't even know why. I don't know what was so right about it, what was so nice. So that can actually more than help the student frustrate the student. So very good. Again, it ends the conversation. Going back to what we said earlier, I like to drink coffee. Very good. Okay, so what does that mean? I said it well. It's good that I drink coffee. What was good about that? And the conversation's over. So there was nothing beneficial from what the teacher said to the student in that interaction. So if we do commend, we want to make sure we give meaningful commendation. Okay, very good. I like how you said X, Y, and Z, or I like that you used this word. I like that you used this tense, or I like whatever it is. Commend, but make sure it's specific. Make sure they understand what they did well and what you liked about it. Because just by saying very good, again, it frustrates the students, and they may even be able to perceive that it's not that they did anything great, that we just want to move on. And that's not encouraging to anybody. So again, specific commendation, and try to always keep the conversation moving. Again, so instead of that, very good, we want to use the follow-up moves mentioned earlier to keep the conversation and the creative process going. Offer sincere, specific, and clear commendation. So as we spoke about feedback, again, not just being corrective, but it's a way for us to interact with the students and give them beneficial feedback, something beneficial they're going to walk away from and have learned something to be able to apply, or they learned that they did something well. They know what they did well, and they know, okay, this went well, I can continue doing this because this was great. So again, whatever feedback we give, whether it's positive or corrective, it needs to be clear, specific, and sincere, because anyone can pick up when someone's just like, yeah, you did a nice job, just stop talking. If that's the attitude we give with, they're going to perceive that it's not nice, but on top of that, it's not encouraging. So just because we're saying good job, we want to make sure that it's sincere, that they really see that we're excited for them, we're happy, and we can pick out what they did well and commend them on it. And again, that comes back to us just being human. We feel the same way if someone just says, oh, I liked whatever you did. That's nice, but if they stop and say, I liked what you did because of this, and that, we're like, oh, wow, they really did enjoy it. They took the time to think about it and to come and give me specific feedback. So just putting ourselves in the student's shoes will help a lot of times too. How would we benefit by someone giving us feedback? Okay, so this is something with written correction, which I really love how in Age-Ready Languages it's incorporated into the classroom, and that is so important. Because the challenge when we're correcting written work is that if the students aren't there, they're not present, we can only guess what they were really trying to say, right? And then if we give it back to them, they may never look at it again. Or if they look at it, they may have to guess what we were saying. So there can be a huge disconnect, a gap in that type of feedback. Correcting written work separately. The student isn't there, and then they read the correction and we're not there. That's a challenge. So what would be the solution to that? Build the feedback for written work into class time. Why? By doing it with the student, the teacher can understand what the real errors are by understanding what the student intended to say. Student can benefit fully from the feedback because it will be understood. Rewriting all, or if we don't have time for that, a portion of the written work, again with the teacher, will allow the student to apply the feedback correctly with further help from the teacher if needed. So I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this, but I definitely have. I have some of my students do written work, and I go over it with them. And sometimes when I see something, I'm not really sure what they were trying to say there. I can see it's incorrect, but I don't even know why, because I don't know what it was supposed to say. So when I ask, what did you mean by that? And then they express it to me, I'm like, oh, okay. So now this is the word that we use in this case, or this is the way we would say it in that case. But by just looking at it, I know it's wrong, but I don't know what it was supposed to say. So I can't correct it. I can't correct the real errors because I don't really know what they were necessarily. So if we can build that into our class time, go over that with the student, and then again, that helps us to understand their process and then for them to understand the correct process. And when they rewrite it with us there, we can now see, did they understand the feedback? Or maybe we need to go over this a little bit more. But doing that together really helps with the writing skills and really helps there to be that connection with the feedback between the teacher and the student. Because if not, it can just be a gap. And at times it can be frustrating for both the teacher and the student. And solution number 10, this may be something a little bit new for some of us. I know when I was in school, this wasn't necessarily implemented, so it may be something a little bit new for some of us, but keep communication open with the students. Point number 1, make sure they know why they are receiving the feedback that they are and that they know how to apply it. One of the things I heard from the professor I was listening to was that there was a class and they were all given a little piece of, I think it was a newspaper, and their assignment was to skim it to be able to read quickly. That was what the teacher wanted them to learn from that assignment. But when they asked the students, oh, what was your assignment about? Some said punctuation, they said all different things. I don't think anyone said skimming. So they had this assignment, but they didn't even really know what they were supposed to be doing. So the students need to know why they are receiving the feedback they are receiving and what to do with it. Because if we give them the tools, but they don't know how to use them, again, it's useless to them. So we want to make sure they know why and now how. What do I do with this information? And 2, something, again, that may be a little newer. Again, when I was in school, I never got this, but it says, ask them what they think about the way you give feedback and how they would like to receive that. Sometimes maybe as a teacher, we think we don't need to ask the students how they feel about it because we're the teacher, we're the professional. But at the end, we want the students to benefit. That's why we're teaching, is for them to get the maximum benefit of what we're doing. So by asking them, that can give us a lot of insight into how they're seeing us. We know what we have in our heads. We know what we mean to say. We know what we mean to project, but we may be giving off something totally different to the students. Another example is that it was of a professor who had learned to never correct students while they're talking. That you don't do that. You just don't interrupt them and correct them. So then he asked his students, would you prefer to be corrected while you're talking or after? And all of them said before, right away. We don't want to have to wait till after to know what was wrong, right away. So then he started correcting everything that they did, and it drove them crazy. So he realized he needed to find a balance. They wanted the correction, so he was wrong the first time, but then going to the other extreme, that didn't work for them either. But had he not asked them that, he may have continued what he was doing. And they said, we don't even know when you give feedback. When do you give us feedback? Because we don't really get it. So just keeping communication open with the students, asking them what they're understanding, how they like to learn, helps a lot so that all this effort that we're putting into giving feedback is actually beneficial for them. Okay, and solution number 11, keep it balanced and keep it fun. So what does that mean? Make sure to remind the students that we all make errors and it's okay. Nobody, whether it's teacher, student, as we know, we're all imperfect. So nobody goes through any process, especially a learning process, without making mistakes. And I've had a student who is super self-conscious about her mistakes and she feels bad, she beats herself up. Help your student to know that that's okay. They're not abnormal, they're not unintelligent. It's not that they're never gonna learn. Errors are normal and it's okay, and we're here to support them with that. Make sure they know that. So yes, we want to give them feedback, we want to correct them, but we don't want to turn it into a correction session that the only thing they hear about are their mistakes. We don't want that. We want to keep it fun. We want them to be encouraged to feel good about what they're doing. And one point that one of the professors brought out that I thought was really, really cool. He said the point of feedback is not just to say that the student is wrong, rather to help them be more right. So again, that's what we want to do. He said righter, but righter, more right. We want them to be more right, as correct as they can possibly be. So if we look at it that way, that'll help us too with our tone and with what we expect of our students. You just want them to be as right as they can be. So we look at it more as a process of building up with feedback, helping them be more right, rather than the process of tearing down because of all the bad mistakes they're making. So we want to keep that in mind. Keep it balanced, keep it fun, build your student up, make them feel good, and be able to apply the feedback that you're offering them. So our summary of what we've gone over. Want to know our students. Why? Because if we know them, we can offer feedback that's best for them. We won't hurt their feelings, won't take away their dignity. We won't be putting effort into something that's not benefiting them. Keep it human. They're not computers. Sometimes we may have only think of that in a kid context. So we make it fun for the kids, but adults are people too. And sometimes adults have more complexes or more self-conscious about their errors than kids are. So when we're talking about them with their accent or their grammar, make sure we give them that respect, that warmth, because for them to come and throw themselves out of their comfort zone to learn another language is a big deal. And we don't want to make them feel bad about that. Use our feedback or follow-up moves. Just follow up what they say. It can be positive or corrective. Reformation, again, that was repeating what they said, reforming the sentence. In order for that to be clear, sometimes we might have to change our tone to make sure they know where the error was, but it shows them that we're interested and it helps them to hear the correct version of what they said. Elaborate, we ask questions. What did you mean by that? How big, how small, when, where? Keeps the student's mind working, keeps their creative process working, and it allows them to implement what they know, to keep talking. Pursuit, again, we chase what they say. We follow it up. We want to keep them talking, keep them interested, keep them engaged, and offer feedback as they go. We keep their mind working. Problematize, we turn everything into a problem, even if it wasn't. And that helps students to analyze their own work, or we can use that in a group setting so that they can analyze each other's work, find the problems, or find how correct it is. And if it's not a problem, explain why it was correct. But that helps them to analyze, and it also helps us to understand their thought process so that we can not only correct the work, but correct possibly the way they're processing things. And no conversation stoppers. So the just very good, the whatevers, we don't want to do that. We want to give specific commendation, a building commendation. If we're going to say very good, why was it very good? And keep the conversation flowing, keep the student engaged, keep it fun, keep it balanced, keep it human. Our writing, again, incorporate that in the class time. Why? Because that'll help us to know where the student's coming from, correct the real errors, and see if they were able to do that. Communication, just understand your student. Understand what they perceive of you. How do they see you as a teacher? How do they understand your feedback? Do they even know that you're giving them feedback? And all of that will help you to give them the best feedback as possible. And again, the balance, like we mentioned, keep it fun, keep it human, let them know it's okay to make mistakes. We're here to support you through your mistakes, keep them upbuilt, and just keep them encouraged for them to continue their learning experience. Because by coming on here and trying to learn another language, they've already taken a big step, and we want to make sure that they stay motivated and continue with that. So if we have any questions, you can leave it in the chat box or mention it here. And that's it. Yes.
Yes, I do have one question. Out of
Okay.
all the 11 tips or items that you have mentioned, Chelsea, is there one that you, let's say, do you think one of them is your favorite one?
I actually like the problematizing a lot. I think I go to that a lot because I've noticed that when I ask the students, if I look at like, is that really how you say it? Then they stop and you can see their mind going, the wheels turning, and a lot of times they can self-correct. Not always, but a lot of times they can. So I really like that because it seems that it really forces them to pull from what they know. And if they don't, and I explain it to them, if I ask that again, they usually can explain it right away. So I like that a lot. And then I also love in the writing asking them what they mean, because by hearing them express what they are trying to say, it really helps me to understand their thought process and understand why they use certain words that they use and the way they use it. And it helps me know where I need to offer feedback.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much, Chelsea. Thank you. That was awesome. That was awesome. We have
Thank you all.
enjoyed your presentation, and thank you, all those of you who have been here tonight with us. And if you're watching this recording, thank you very much, and share it, please. All right. So Chelsea, help me with the next slide, please.
Okay. Let me minimize this.
Yes, we just want our friends to remember our contact information in case you're interested in more information that can help you with your methodology in teaching. And if you need any assistance with any particular English course in terms of speaking workshop, a pronunciation workshop, or an English booster, we are here to help you out. So thank you very much for being here, for watching the recording, and see you next time when we will be doing probably, very likely, our 5th workshop next month. It is going to be January 2022, if everything goes well. So thank you very much for being here and for watching this recording. Bye-bye. Bye.